導くルビの音瞬間はまさ夢を映しけれどこの両手を握るだがハンドルバー夢映す手を取ってボードで巡って場になって囚われたアマリリスを茨に探せ無限のどんどが至る瞬間秘密潜む森林の底Little Goody Two Shoes
Hey guys, what's up? Time for some little goody two shoes. I'll probably play till like 6:30 or so, 6:45, something like that. And then I'm gonna take like a half an hour break for some dinner, and then we'll be back with some spooky story time. Although I don't know, I haven't picked out what story we're gonna read yet, but you know that I have got to at least read, The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. I love me some Edgar Allan Poe. I wonder when like last time I couldn't figure out how to do the, windmill thing. And it still won't let me go up there. So, let's see. Well, I mean, it doesn't not let me up there. It just says, well, maybe I ought to come back later. And when is later? When is that supposed to be? Yeah, like it does that again. Like, what other time is there? What other time? It literally shows up in my quest objectives. See? Oh, I guess it's because it's a time thing, so. Whatever. Fine. Back to the creepy fucking woods I go, I guess. Because, you know, Elise didn't learn a lesson last time after getting chased by butterflies that apparently ate her fucking flesh. But, hey, let's go back to the creepy place. Because they promised us good stuff. Oh no, the horseshoes. Not the horseshoes! All Eugen's horses. At least never learns the lessons. True words have never been spoken. Yeah, the horse disappeared when I brought out all the villagers.
Rose and Marine!
Rose and Marine's like, yep, let's keep going. It probably turns out Rose and Marie is the witch and everybody's right all along.
Rose and Marine?
She says too many creepy things.
For goodness sake!
And they're right, Sunny. Sunny's already here. Nightmare Land. Oh, Lord. Well, I guess these are the golden fields that they were talking about. Oh, nice. Okay, just, you know, random elevator. We go down. What is this? The, Colosseum? Oh, no. The horse. Seems like Rose and Marine knew exactly where to go, right?
For goodness sake!
There's no going back. Is there, though? The cat. And there's another crow. You know, this reminds me of the labyrinth in the labyrinth, you know, where he goes, where the Goblin King meets that girl, and there are like these crazy stairs all over the place, and you can't ever tell, you know, which is up and which is down. Pleasant surprise! Pleasant surprise! Oh no. Ah, of course there are others. The crows talked about you're not special. Oh shit. Better not tell Elise she's not special. She'll have you killed and eaten. I love how everything's trying to tell her that, hey, don't do this dumb stuff because you're not special at all. Oh lord, I'm like almost dead from hunger again. My sanity is going there. I think I mistakenly ate the mushrooms. I shouldn't have eaten the mushrooms. They gave me hearts. Dang it. Oh well. I suppose I probably need the hearts later anyway.
For goodness sake.
I do need to make more money in this game, or else I'm gonna starve to death or lose my sanity. Although I have no idea what Elise is gonna do if they encounter anything. I mean, the best she can do is run away. Look how happy Rosamarine is. Uh-oh.
Hurry it up!
She's all spacey now. I don't know how I skip files so much, but I do, apparently. Aha! One ring of blah, 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 blah.
What is this?
That's the crow's ring. Oh god, she's spacing out again. Look at those creepy eyeballs. Oh, and now she's woken up again. Oh no. The testament. The testament!
Rosamarine?
Oh, Lord. That's a secret! These are like the Demon Slayer crows. But creepier.
Wait!
Oh, to hell with it. It's hard to say whether or not she's acting like herself or not. Hey, maybe I'll find some food here. Too bad there wasn't anything in that one. I do need to explore just in case there is something. Ah. I got matches. Yeah, definitely need those. Oh, here's a whole bunch of nests. Something with the circle. Alright, so we know where the ring goes then. Once we get it back from the crow. How? What the hell? Jesus Christ, these birds are gonna kill me, apparently. Jesus. What the hell is up with the birds? We got an acorn. What does an acorn do? Something I can eat? Oops. It is indeed something I can eat. And it gives me health back. I definitely need that. What the heck? I didn't think I was anywhere close to that tree, but... Jeez. Well, there's the crow.
For goodness sake!
Fucking birds took most of my life before I realized what was going on. I just kind of want to see what's over here. See if there's like anything that I can get to save myself a little bit. Oh, there's another maiden though. Another golden girl. I was once in your shoes. Quite probably literally. Literally, look at the red shoes. Hey, I got an ointment. I probably ought to use that because you know I'm just about dead. Fucking birds suck ass. Dang it! Like I said, I didn't think I was that close to fucking birds, but apparently I am. Or was. Stupid birds. Alright, please save again. Lord knows I'm probably gonna at least die on the next part. A few times. Horribly wrong. Stupid fucking creepy birds. I need food and I need a heart. Like, pretty bad. Need some health. Okay. Fits so perfectly in there. Oh Lord. It's another elevator.
Hurry it up!
Come further.
For goodness sake.
We have to keep going, I guess. Man, Rose and Marine's eyes a little bit creepy, aren't they?
Marine?
No, Lord. Been giving us its word this whole time.
Rose and Marine?
Of course she is. Oh, we're going down, not up. Okay, expect to kind of go to up. Ah, Rose and Marine is the rich.
You know, Out with it!
Oh. Merciful Marquise. Marquis. I told you she was the witch. Made too much sense. That is who the good company is for, not for his Marquis. Another gold maiden. No, she's holding a cross. One after the other. It lost more sanity. We're gonna have to find some more sanity. No, I guess I'm not supposed to go that way. We got another save. We never give up on the save points, 'cause I need those all the time. Can't go that way either. Don't blow up my candle. Oh. Well, that's nice that I got a leather purse. Fucking chicken. So I have to be really fucking careful right there. Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't even notice that grass down there. Staying apart, but chickens. Are you using up things for Cult of the Lamb? Why? Oh, little shiny and his little paws. Alright. Now watch out for the undead chickens running around. Basically, just have to run by them super fast. Okay. Oh, Lord! Oh, I suppose I was supposed to go that way. Trying to help with sanity. I don't know if that's gonna help. I think I need to go back down, though. I mean, I can feel like I can fly. I can find more, but obviously I might have a little bit of a hard time. With these stupid fucking chickens. Oh, I can't go back. Okay. Well, there might be more things I need in there. But at least I didn't die from the chicken. The ceramic grove of wheat. It's the witching hour. Watch out for anything. Yep, here comes the chickens again. A crow slate. Might need that one later. Oops. Fancy seeing you! Don't provoke him. Whose side are you on, Rosenmarie? She's definitely a creature. seems like there are like two opposing, not quite opposing sides, but like the witch obviously wants her body and he just wants her. And then everybody else doesn't really, they don't really like the witch. And then he just fucks off again. I mean, we should be asking Rose and Marine a lot of questions here. Oh, somehow I narrowly avoided that one. Wow. Found another one. Okay, so we gotta go to our items. Key items. I got 2 crow sights. I could probably pick them back up if I needed to. I don't necessarily mind these puzzles, but I wish it would just like go ahead and like bring up like the things you have, like the menu. I guess I'm still missing one. Unless I get one from the other side, but... Oh, shit. There's the other one I need. Come on. There we go. Oops. Alright, now I gotta go this one back. Chicken Dodger. Oh, I don't know why I keep doing that, knowing that that's not gonna work. I did it again. Oh my god. Alright, now we gotta be careful because of these fucking chickens, man. Ah, another golden maiden. Gonna end up losing all my sanity here. I'm not like the others. Those red shoes. Okay, I think I need to go ahead and drink that grape juice. Before I die. From lack of sanity. Although, honestly, if they don't, like, give me any more health or sanity things, I probably will end up that way anyway. Because I'm broke. Elise is broke. Oh, that's nice. She did it again. And I guess I can't use a lamp here. Absolutely, we need to save the progress. Aw, okay, fine. I can't go explore first. I have to do the story first.
For goodness sake.
I love how she calls her Ross Marine. Even though it's Rosen Marine.
I'm losing my wits!
She just don't give a shit. My eyeball! Rather peckish. They want her eyeball. Oh, could eat a horse. Snap. Wow. The Wheat Testament. It looks like her hair. Actually, it looks more like her hair.
What is this?
I figured they, I guess she thought that they were gonna take her eyeball.
Rosen Marine.
And I don't think they're doing anything to her because, she the witch.
Rosen Marine!
Oh, that time she said her name right. Rosen Marine.
Elise. Out with it! Rosen Marine?
No, Lord. The horse, I guess. That's supposed to be the horse? Looks strange.
Out with it!
Oh, Lord.
Rosen Marine! What is this? Rosen Marine! What in the Lord's name?
No, Lord. The Rawr Marines lost their ever-living fucking mind. Oh, that's wonderful. Jesus. Okay. That was quick. I thought I'd run away faster, but apparently not. Like, wow. You know, I kind of figured that the horse in the car would be like everything else. But apparently not. Sonny, don't roll and hit the F buttons, okay? I guess it's gonna be like the chickens. It just runs straight, I guess, maybe. Yes, I can't, I can't make it go faster. Tender flesh! Tender flesh! It looks as bad as the Berserker horse, but probably isn't. No, I don't think anything can quite be as bad as the Berserk horse, if we're being completely honest. I just like how she screams like they're fucking killing her, but I guess her eye does hurt. The Wheat Testament. I like how the wheat is like dark and gray. Like stowed.
What is this? Frozen marine.
They're yanking a bunch of her hair out. That's true. It's probably not nearly as bad as her eyeball getting ripped out, though. Or this horse that chases us down.
Frozen marine. Elise. Out with it. Frozen marine.
I wonder if Holly was the witch. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe you have to dodge the side. That's what I'm thinking. It's like the chickens. Because obviously I ain't sprinting faster than it.
Out with it. Frozen marine. What is this? Frozen marine.
Take my hand.
What in the Lord's name?
The Rawr Marine's like, I'm going crazy. Oh, Lord. Oh, good. I was able to dodge it, I guess. Time to save. I guess that was it. I thought it was going to be, like, a lot longer than that. You know, like the fucking butterflies. But that's fine. I mean, I'm probably going to have to see it again anyway. Oh yeah, it's totally coming after me right now. Ow. Ow! Some fucking bitchin' horse. I died. Why do we have to have thorny barricades and a fucking horse in the cart, like, chasing me down? Why? Why? Why does it have to be both? Like, what the fuck, man? Ah, dang it. And every time I mess up. Ah! Oh, you fucking... Now they're dropping stuff in front of me and they just keep adding to it. Rude. I feel like this game's like mechanics are worse than like having to fight Simon. Like, I think I would fight Simon in Expedition 33 like a million times. This is very painful, okay? Ah! Jesus. It almost got me, but I made it that time. Jesus. I don't know. After that, it might be worse than the Berserk horse. I don't know. At least the Berserk horse dies. Yeah, preparing for my arrival by trying to kill me.
What is this? What in the Lord's name?
Man, he must really like Elise.
Rosenmarine! Elise. Out with it!
Ah. A statue of Elise. Let's see. Again! Oh, I guess I just can't stop for nothing right here. Oh lord, it died again. R.I.P. horse. Oh.
Rosenmarine!
And then Rosemarine falls. That's cool. At least the horse fell before she did. Oh no.
What in the Lord's name?
Oh, but she is Rosenmarine. Dun dun dun. Oh yeah, I should have remembered that it was the Mariluid. The people, that Swedish tradition where people dress up like the horse and go and ask for beer basically from everybody. And then they bring you good luck if you can give it beer. Oh no. Don't trust her. She's the witch. Oh, here we go. She's like, aren't I your best friend, Elise? Wild and wandering thistle. I love this like happy music, but it's not happy lyrics at all. That goat letter there. I actually really enjoy the songs in this. It's so neat. Naomi just snoozing away. Gonna wake up and think it was all a dream.
Rose and Marine.
Oh no, her eye is hurt. Dun dun dun. Oh, there goes his feeder. Maybe I can go to the tower now. Can meet Frey at the village inn. Okay, so I have to do this part then. Rude. I need money though, because I am starving. I'm half starved and shit. I'm half starved. I'm half dead. I'm half insane.
Good morning, Elise.
Then she acts like nothing ever happened.
I'm sorry. Out with it!
Oh no.
But
Dun dun dun. Now she gonna gaslight her. She gonna gaslight her.
Are you alright, Elise?
Who knows? You never know who's actually telling the truth.
You know, Elise.
Oh no.
It's fate, Elise.
I love how she just says it's fate.
passionate.
Prepare it to be eaten.
Yes.
Gross. Could you eat something with hair in it? No, not me. Absolutely not.
Are you alright, Elise? Elise.
One of the few things I'd rather not eat. Yeah, that's pretty big for a raccoon to say I don't want to eat something. Alright, well at least I know that I am indeed safe. Currently. Like, I won't get any hearts lost. But I do need some bread. That means I gotta work. And I don't have 2 extra bread. So I don't know what to do about my suspicion. Really? When is it ever gonna let me come back? When is it ever going to let me? I've been trying to find out, you know, the rest of the prayer story this whole time. Maybe I have to catch up a little bit first. I don't know though. Oh, look at all the crows.
What is this? Are you alright, Elise?
I don't think she's okay. What am I stuck on? The Sunny has returned. He's gonna get up here again. An acorn. Oh, they gave me an acorn. How nice. I have some money, but I don't think I have enough money.
What in the Lord's name?
All the crows everywhere. Sunny. I love you, but can you, like, sit down not in front of this monitor? Hmm? The crows. That's Elise's fault too. Can you, like, I would like it if you move over, like, this way a little bit, Sunny. Now you just turn around and sit in the exact same spot. You're such a jerk. I don't have any tasks, I guess. Dang it! I need money, though. I need money from the... Let's see. My suspicion is like halfway there. That's wonderful. Anyway. Rotten apples. Where is everybody? Now that's a bad omen. I definitely need to do some tasks. Okay, well that's not too bad, just the sack. But they're not gonna leave it alone. A sick kid and crows stealing the grain. Ew, she wants me to cook my hair in the oven. Making bread out of it.
Now that you mention it.
And then a whole bunch of grain will come up missing and then they'll blame me. I don't know about that. Okay, well, I guess we'll talk to him later then. God, look at all these pros. Oh no, the poor kid. Hands are injured. Crows, I guess. The crows pecked them.
You know,
Oh, Lord. Found a goat's head. Tongues ripped out. A sick goat.
I'm sorry,
Now I could probably investigate the notes further. But if I do that, it'll probably take up all my time that I have. I definitely need to eat them. All right. I feel like I chop wood better. I don't have 2 extra bread. I mean, they're gonna raise my suspicion and stuff, but I don't know what I can do about it. I'm poor. Watch Sunny get in the way here. Sometimes I forget where my hand is and which button I'm pressing. Alright, round 2. Dang it! The last one. I got an A! You win! Thank goodness, I got 40 for that. That'll buy me some bread. Oh, there's Muffy. I better go give her something. Oh, I don't have any though. Hearty soup! Man! Already having a hard enough time and she wants the most expensive things on this damn menu. Of course, it does help if I talk to her and stuff, if I get her stuff every day, but... $10 gold. Oops, that was the wrong one. No, what? No, what? Did I press selling or buying? I feel like I'm losing my mind. There we go. How do I get hearty soup? I probably need it. Where do I get hearty soup from? Well fed and her well moneyed, I guess. Let's see if I can find more about that note now. Maybe it'll let me. I'll go see if it gives me the note. If it doesn't, we'll go find something else to do, and then I'll go take a break for dinner, and then I'll be back with some narration. There we go. Now I can go in. And probably die. Crow. An owl. I like how these hands are gonna randomly pop out. That's a deer. Well, I guess I can't look at it though. Oh, look at my sanity get lower. I'm gonna have to... Oh, no, I'm gonna die. I've gone insane. Okay, so definitely need more grape juice then. Well, I was so close. I'll probably play some more next week. I need to obviously beat the game. I think it's a pretty short game, but... Alright, let me go ahead and go eat some dinner. And I will be back momentarily.
Goody two shoes.
Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in exchange for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in exchange for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in exchange for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting Dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting Dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting Dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting Dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting Dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting Dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting Dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933, President Roosevelt ordered all gold over a small value be turned in and exchanged for smelly, dirty, paper human money. On June 5th, 1933, the United States officially went off the gold standard. Do you know what happens when a dragon's breath touches paper money? Dragons have had to resort to desperate measures, assuming human-like forms, depositing this paper money into human banks, and working jobs. Gone are the days you could burn down a castle and take its treasure. Many dragons are working on rebuilding their stocks of gold, but the exchange rate from feeble green paper to beautiful golden metal is very challenging. Please consider supporting Dragon streamers with a donation, Twitch subscription, or art commission. Your donations will go toward gold bars and coins, which will eventually allow your dragon to sleep on a bed of gold again. It's the only way for a dragon to get a proper rest. Please call the 1-800 number below on your screen to make a donation today. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and compassion. Are you, or a dragon you know, suffering from an understocked gold hoard? On April 5th, 1933. All right, in the bag. Let me center myself here. So, oh, that's not what I'm reading. We're gonna read some spooky stories now. I'm gonna have to find some music. I don't know which story to read first. So, we've got a couple different options. I'm gonna read, The Raven at the end, Edgar Allan Poe's. You know, I like to do that like every year. It's just a little thing I do. Let me change, my thing here. There we go. But you know, I can't decide which story I want to read. Like, we've got Gothic chilling ghost short stories, and I also have the H.P. Lovecraft Great Tales of Horror. Excuse me. I'm pretty sure I've read The Call of Cthulhu before. There was Dagon too. I'm actually gonna watch Dagon eventually, like the 2001. And then there's Chilling Ghost Stories. There's a lot in here. It's like anthology kind of thing. There's like The New Catacomb, Mourners, Figure on the Sidewalk, Stay Away from the Accordion Girl, The Waiting Room, Lost Souls, The Skeleton Crew, The Black Cat, and Ligeia, which is also they're both by Edgar Allan Poe. There's The New Catacomb, that's by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Monkey's Paw. Should have Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Let's do Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I think that sounds pretty fun, because like that's where it comes from. I also need to watch The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's pretty good. Alright. I need to like sneeze a bit more, I think. Okay, I should be good now, I think. I don't know what else we'll read, but if we have time, we'll read another story. Because I also have the Complete Tales, Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. I actually have 2 of those. I probably need to get rid of one, but they're both cool looking. Alright. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. A pleasing land of drowsy head it was, of dreams that wave before the half-shut eye, and of gay castles in the clouds that pass, forever flushing round a summer sky. Castle of Indolence. In the bosom of one of those spacious coves which indent the eastern shore of the Hudson, at that broad expansion of the river denominated by the ancient Dutch navigators the Tappan Zee, and where they always prudently shortened sail and implored the protection of St. Nicholas when they crossed. There lies a small market town or rural port, which by some is called Greensburg, but which is more generally and properly known by the name of Tarrytown. This name was given, we are told, in former days by the good housewives of the adjacent country for the inveterate propensity of their husbands to linger about the village tavern on market days. Be that as it may, I do not vouch for the fact, but merely advert to it, for the sake of being precise and authentic. Not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there is a little valley, or rather lap of land, among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. A small brook glides through it with just murmur enough to lull one to repose, and the occasional whistle of a quail or tapping of a woodpecker is almost the only sound that ever breaks in upon the uniform tranquility. Oh, okay, did unpin. Mr. Bogarth must have unpinned it. I just remembered that I needed to unpin my back in 30 minutes. I recollect that when a stripling, my first exploit in squirrel shooting was in a grove of tall walnut trees that shades one side of the valley. Oh, well, it got rid of it itself, I guess. Oh, I thought I'd put it at the end, but maybe it didn't. Whatever. I recollect that when a stripling, my first exploit in squirrel shooting was in a grove of tall walnut trees that shades one side of the valley. I had wandered into it at noontime, when all nature's peculiarly quiet, and was startled by the roar of my own gun, as it broke the Sabbath stillness around and was prolonged and reverberated by the angry echoes. If ever I should wish for a retreat, whither I might steal from the world and its distractions, and dream quietly away at the remnant of a troubled life, I know of none more promising than this little valley. From the listless repose of the place, and the peculiar character of its inhabitants, who are descendants from the original Dutch settlers, this sequestered glen has long been known by the name of Sleepy Hollow, and its rustic lads are called the Sleepy Hollow Boys throughout all the neighboring country. A drowsy, dreamy influence seems to hang over the land and pervade the very atmosphere. Some say that the place was bewitched by a German doctor during the early days of settlement. Others, that an old Indian chief, the prophet or wizard of his tribe, held his powwows there before the country was discovered by Master Hendrik Hudson. Certain it is, the place still continues under the sway of some witching power that holds a spell over the minds of the good people, causing them to walk in a continual reverie. They are given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs, are subject to trances and visions, and frequently see strange sights, and hear music and voices in the air. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight of the country, and the nightmare, with her whole ninefold, seems to make it the favorite scene of her gambols. The dominant spirit, however, that haunts this enchanted region, and seems to be commander-in-chief of all the powers in the air, is the apparition of a figure on horseback, without a head. It is said by some to be the ghost of a Hessian trooper, whose head had been carried away by a cannonball in some nameless battle during the Revolutionary War, and who is ever and anon seen by the country folk hurrying along in the gloom of night, as if on the wings of the wind. His haunts are not confined to the valley, but extend at times to the adjacent roads, and especially to the vicinity of a church at no great distance. Indeed, certain of the most authentic historians of those parts, who have been careful in collecting and collating the floating facts concerning this specter, allege that the body of the trooper had been buried in the churchyard. The ghost rides forth to the scene of battle in nightly quest of his head, and that the rushing speed with which he sometimes passes along the hollow, like a midnight blast, is owing to his being belated and in a hurry to get back to the churchyard before daybreak. Such is the general purport of this legendary superstition, which has furnished materials for many a wild story in that region and shadows. and the specter is known at all the country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. It is remarkable that the visionary propensity I have mentioned is not confined to the native inhabitants of the valley, but is unconsciously imbibed by everyone who resides there for a time. However wide awake they may have been before they entered that sleepy region, they are sure, in a little time, to inhale the witching influence of the air and begin to grow imaginative, to dream dreams and see apparitions. I mention this peaceful spot with all possible laud, for it is in such little retired Dutch valleys, found here and there embosomed in the great state of New York, that population, manners, and customs remain fixed, while the great torrent of migration and improvement, which is making such incessant changes in other parts of this restless country, sweeps by them unobserved. They are like those little nooks of still water which border a rapid stream, where we may see the straw and bubble riding quietly at anchor, or slowly revolving in their mimic harbor, undisturbed by the rush of the passing current. Though many years have elapsed since I troweled the drowsy shades of Sleepy Hollow, yet I question whether I should not still find the same trees and the same families vegetating in its sheltered bosom. In this by-place of nature there abode, in a remote period of American history, that is to say, some 30 years since, a worthy wight of the name of Ichabod Crane, who sojourned, or as he expressed it, tarried, in Sleepy Hollow for the purpose of instructing the children of the vicinity. He was a native of Connecticut, a state which supplies the Union with pioneers for the mind as well as the forest, and sends forth yearly its legions of frontier woodsmen and country schoolmasters. The cognomen of Crane was not inapplicable to his person. He was tall, but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, hands that dangle a mile out of his sleeves, feet that might have served for shovels, and his whole frame mostly loosely hung together. His head was small and flat at the top, with huge ears, large green glassy eyes, and a long snipe nose, so that it looked like a weathercock perched on its spindle neck to tell which way the wind blew. To see him striding along the profile of a hill on a windy day, with his clothes bagging and fluttering about him, one might have mistaken him for the genius of famine descending upon the earth, or some scarecrow eloped from a cornfield. His schoolhouse was a low building of one large room, rudely constructed out of logs, the windows partly glazed and partly patched with leaves of old copybooks. It was the most ingeniously secured at vacant hours, with a width twist in the handle of the door and stakes set against the window shutters, so that though a thief might get in with perfect ease, he would find some embarrassment in getting out, an idiom probably borrowed by the architect, Joost van Houten, from the mystery of an eel pot. The schoolhouse stood in a rather lonely but pleasant situation just at the foot of a woody hill, with a brook running close by and a formidable birch tree growing at one end of it. From hence the low murmur of his pupils' voices, conning over their lessons, might be heard in a drowsy summer's day, like the hum of a beehive, interrupted now and then by the authoritative voice of the master, in the tone of menace or command, or, peradventure, by the appalling sound of the birch, as he urged some tardy loiterer along the flowery path of knowledge. Truth to say, he was a conscientious man, and ever bore in mind the golden maxim, spare the rod and spoil a child. Ichabod Crane's scholars certainly were not spoiled. I would not have imagined, however, that he was one of those cruel potentates of the school who enjoy in the smart of their subjects. On the contrary, he administered justice with discrimination, rather severity, taking the burden off the backs of the weak and laying it on those on the strong. Your mere puny stripling that winced at the least flourish of the rod was passed by with indulgence, but the claims of justice were satisfied by inflicting a double portion on some little tough, wrong-headed, broad-skirted Dutch urchin who sulked and swelled and grew dogged and sullen beneath the birch. All this he called doing his duty by their parents, and he never inflicted a chastisement without following it by assurance, so consolatory to the smarting urchin that he would remember it and thank him for the longest days he had to live. When school hours were over, he was even the companion of a playmate of the larger boys, and on holiday afternoons would convoy some of the smaller ones home, who happened to have pretty sisters or good housewives or mothers, noted for the comforts of the cupboard, Indeed, it behooved him to keep on good terms with his pupils. The revenue arising from his school was small, and would have been scarcely sufficient to furnish him with daily bread, for he was a huge feeder, and, though lank, had the dilating powers of an anaconda. But to help out his maintenance, he was, according to the country custom in those parts, boarded and lodged at the houses of the farmers whose children he instructed. With these he lived successfully a week at a time, thus going the rounds of the neighborhood with all his worldly effects tied up in a cotton handkerchief. That all this might not be too onerous the purpose of his rustic patrons, who were apt to consider the cost of schooling a grievous burden, and the schoolmasters as mere drones, he had various ways of rendering himself both useful and agreeable. He assisted the farmers occasionally in the lighter labors of their farms, helped to make hay, mended the fences, took the horses to water, drove the cows from pasture, and cut wood for the winter fire. He laid aside, too, all the dominant dignity and absolute sway with which he lorded in his little empire, the school, and became wonderfully gentle and ingratiating. He found favor in the eyes of the mothers by petting the children, particularly the youngest, and like Lion Bold, with whom so magnanimously the lamb did hold, he would sit with the child on one knee and rock a cradle with his foot for whole hours together. In addition to his other vocations, he was the singing master of the neighborhood, and picked up on many bright shillings by instructing the old folks in psalmody. It was a matter of no little vanity to him on Sundays to take his station in front of the church gallery with a band of chosen singers, where in his own mind he completely carried away the palm of the parson. Certain it is, his voice resounded far above all the rest of the congregation, and there are peculiar wavers still to be heard in that church, and which may even be heard half a mile off, quite to the opposite side of the mill pond, and on a still Sunday morning, which are said to be legitimately descended from the nose of Ichabod Crane. Thus, by divers little makeshifts, in that ingenious way which is commonly denominated by hook and by crook, the worthy pedagogue not only tolerably enough, and was thought by all who understood nothing of the labor of headwork, to have a wonderfully easy life of it. The schoolmaster is generally a man of some importance to the female circle of a rural neighborhood, being considered a kind of idle, gentlemanlike personage of vastly superior taste and accomplishments to the rough country swains, and indeed inferior in the learning only to the parson. His appearance, therefore, is apt to occasion some little stir at the tea table of a farmhouse, and in the addition of a supernumerary dish of cakes or sweetmeats, or, peradventure, the parade of a silver teapot. Our man of letters, therefore, was peculiar happily in the smiles of all the country damsels. How he would figure among them in the churchyard sorry, I had to stop. Sonny was about to try to jump on a shelf. Now I gotta find my spot again. How he would figure among them in the churchyard between services on Sundays, gathering grapes for them from the wild vines that overran the surrounding trees, reciting for their amusement all the epitaphs on tombstones, or the sauntering with a whole bevy of them along the banks of the adjacent mill pond, while the more bashful country bumpkins hung sheepishly back, envying his superior elegance and address. From his half-iterant life, he was a kind of traveling gazette, carrying the whole budget of local gossip from house to house, so that his appearance was always greeted with satisfaction. He was, moreover, esteemed by the women as a man of great erudition, for he had read several books quite through, and was perfect master of Cotton Mather's History of New England Witchcraft, in which, by the way, he most firmly and potently believed. He was, in fact, an odd mixture of small shrewdness and simple credulity. There we go. Sometimes I have to say things slow. If I haven't said a word in a while. His appetite for the marvelous and his powers of digesting it were equally extraordinary, and both had been increased by his residence in this spellbound region. No tale was too gross or monstrous for his capacious swallow. It was often his delight, after his school was dismissed in the afternoon, to stretch himself on the rich bed of clover bordering the little brook that whimpered by his schoolhouse, and ne'er con over old Mather's direful tales, until the gathering dusk of evening made the printed page a mere mist before his eyes. Then, as he wended his way by swamp and stream and awful woodland to the farmhouse where he happened to be quartered, every sound of nature, at that witching hour, fluttered his excited imagination. The moan of the whippoorwill from the hillside, the boding cry of the tree-toad, the harbinger of storm, the dreary hooting of the screech owl, or the sudden rustling in the thickets of birds frightened from their roost. The fireflies, too, which sparkled most vividly in the darkest places, now and then startled him, as one of uncommon brightness would stream across his path. And if, by chance, a huge blockhead of a beetle came winging his blundering flight against him, the poor varlet was ready to give up the ghost with the idea that he was struck with the witch's token. His only resource on such occasions, either to drown thought or drive away evil spirits, was to sing psalm tunes, and the good people of Sleepy Hollow, as they sat by their doors of an evening, were often filled with awe at hearing his nasal melody, and linked to sweetness drawn out, floating from the distant hill or along the dusty road. Another of his sources of fearful pleasure was to pass long winter evenings with the old Dutch wives as they sat spinning by the fire, with a row of apples roasting and sputtering along the hearth, and listening to their marvelous tales of ghosts and goblins, and haunted fields, and haunted brooks, and haunted bridges, and haunted houses, and particularly of the Headless Horseman, or Galloping Hessian of the Hollow, as they sometimes called him. He would delight them equally by his anecdotes of witchcraft, and the direful omens and portentous sights sounded in the air, which prevailed in the earlier times of Connecticut, and would frighten them woefully with speculations upon comets and shooting stars, and with the alarming fact that the world did absolutely turn round, and that they were half the time topsy-turvy. But if there was a pleasure in all this, while snugly cuddling in the chimney corner of a chamber that was already aglow from the crackling wood fire, and where, of course, no spectre dared to show its face, it was dearly purchased by the terrors of his subsequent walk homewards. What fearful shapes and shadows beset his path amidst the dim and ghastly glare of a snowy night! With what wistful look did he eye every trembling ray of light streaming across the waste fields from some distant window! How often was he appalled by some shrub covered with snow, which, like a sheeted spectre, beset his very path! How often did he shrink with the curdling awe at the sound of his own steps on the frosty crusts beneath his feet, and dread to look over his shoulder, lest he should behold some uncouth being tramping close behind him. And how often was he thrown into complete dismay by some rushing blast, howling among the trees, and the idea that it was the Galloping Hessian on one of his nightly scourings. I'm gonna take a drink of water real quick. There is a small break. All these, however, were mere terrors of the night, phantoms of the mind that walk in darkness, and though he had seen many spectres in his time, and had been more than once beset by Satan in divers shapes, in his lonely perambulations, yet daylight put an end to all these evils, and he would have passed a pleasant life of it, in despite of the devil and all his works, if his path had not been crossed by a being that causes more perplexity than a mortal man with ghosts, goblins, and the whole race of witches put together, and that was a woman. Among the musical disciples who assembled one evening in each week to receive his instructions in psalmody was Katrina Van Tassel, the daughter and only child of a substantial Dutch farmer. She was a blooming lass, a fresh 18, plump as a partridge, ripe and melting and rosy-cheeked as one of her father's peaches, and universally famed, not merely for her beauty, but her vast expectations. She was withal a little coquette, as might be perceived even in her dress, which was a mixture of ancient and modern fashions, as most suited to set off her charms. She wore the ornaments of pure yellow gold, which her great-great-grandmother had brought over some Sardon, and the tempting stomacher of the olden time, and withal a provokingly short petticoat, to display the prettiest foot and ankle in the country around. Oh God, not the ankle! Not the ankle. Ah, that's very scandalous back in those days. Ichabod Crane had a soft and foolish heart toward the sex, and it is not to be wondered at that so tempting a morsel soon found favor in his eyes, more especially after he had visited her in her paternal mansion. Old Baltus Van Tassel was a perfect picture of a thriving, contented, liberal-hearted farmer. He seldom, it is true, sent either his eyes or his thoughts beyond the boundaries of his own farm, but within those everything was snug, happy, and well-conditioned. He was satisfied with his wealth, but not proud of it, and he piqued himself upon the hearty abundance rather than the style in which he lived. His stronghold was situated on the banks of the Hudson, in one of those green, sheltered, fertile nooks in which the Dutch farmers were so fond of nestling. A great elm tree spread its broad branches over it, at the foot of which bubbled up a spring of the softest and sweetest water, and a little well formed of a barrel, and then stole sparkling away through the grass to a neighboring brook that babbled along alders and dwarf willows. Hard by the farmhouse was a vast barn that might have been served for a church, every window and crevice of which seemed bursting forth with the treasures of the farm. The flail was busily resounding within it from morning to night. Swallows and martins skimmed twittering about the eaves, and rows of pigeons, some with one eye turned up as if watching the weather, some in cooing and bowing about their dames, were enjoying the sunshine on the roof. Sleek, unwieldy porkers were grunting in the repose and abundance of their pens, from whence sallied forth, now and then, troops of sucking pigs, as if to stuff the air. A stately squadron of snowy geese were riding in an adjoining pond, convoying whole fleets of ducks. Regiments of turkeys were gobbling through the farmyard, and guinea fowls were fretting about it like ill-tempered housewives with their peevish, discontented cry. Before the barn door strutted the gallant cock, the pattern of a husband, a warrior, and fine gentleman, clapping its burnished wings and crowing in the pride and gladness of his heart, sometimes tearing up the earth with its feet, and then generously calling his ever-hungry family of wives and children to enjoy the rich morsel which he had discovered. The pedagogue's mouth was watered as he looked upon this sumptuous promise of luxurious winter fare. In his devouring mind's eye, he pictured to himself every roasting pig running about with a pudding in its belly, and an apple in its mouth. The pigeons were snugly put to bed in a comfortable pie, and tucked in with a coverlet of crust. The geese were swimming in their own gravy, and the ducks pairing cozingly in the dishes, like snug married couples with a decent competency of onion sauce. In the porkers he saw carved out of the furniture sleek side of bacon, and juicy relishing ham, not a turkey he beheld daintily trussed up with his gizzard under its wing, and, peradventure, a necklace of savory sausages, and even bright Chanticleer himself sprawling on his back in a side dish, with uplifted claws as if craving that quarter which his chivalrous spirit disdained to ask while living. As the enraptured Ichabod fancied all of this, as he rolled his great green eyes over the fat meadowlands and the rich fields of wheat, of rye, of buckwheat, and Indian corn, and the orchard burdened with ruddy fruit which surrounded the warm tenement of Van Tassel, his heart yearned after the damsel who was to inherit these domains, and his imagination expanded with the idea how they might be readily turned into cash, and the money invested in immense tracts of wild land and shingle palaces in the wilderness. Nay, his busy fancy already realized his hopes, and presented to him the blooming Katrina, with a whole family of children, mounted on the top of a wagon loaded with household trumpery, with pots and kettles dangling beneath, and he beheld himself bestriding a pacing mare with a colt at her heels, setting out for Kentucky, Tennessee, or Lord knows where. When he entered the house, the conquest of his heart was complete. It was one of those spacious farmhouses, with high-ridged but lowly sloping roofs, built in the style handed down from the first Dutch settlers, the low, projecting eaves forming a piazza along the front, capable of being closed up in bad weather. Under this were hung flails, harnesses, various utensils of husbandry, and nets for fishing in the neighboring river. Benches were built along the sides for summer use, and a great spinning wheel at one end, and a churn at the other, showed the various uses to which this important porch might be devoted. From this piazza, the wondering Ichabod entered the hall, which formed the center of the mansion and the place of usual residence. Here, rows of a resplendent pewter, ranged on a long dresser, dazzled his eyes. In one corner stood a huge bag of wool ready to be spun. In another, a quantity of linsey woolsey just from the loom, ears of Indian corn, and strings of dried apples and peaches, hung in gay festoons along the walls, mingled with the gaud of red peppers, and a door left ajar gave him a peep into the best parlor, where the claw-footed chairs and a dark mahogany table shone like mirrors. Andirons with their accompanying shovel and tongs glistened from their covert of asparagus tops. Mock oranges and conch shells decorated the mantelpiece. Strings of various colored birds' eggs were suspended above it. A great ostrich egg was hung from the center of the room, and a corner cupboard, knowingly left open, displayed immense treasures of old silver and well-mended china. From the moment Ichabod laid his eyes upon the regions of delight, the peace of his mind was at an end, and his only study was how to gain the affections of the peerless daughter of Van Tassel. My music stopped. Hang on. We're gonna play a different track here. All right. In this enterprise, however, he had no more real difficulties than generally fell to the lot of a knight-errant of yore, who seldom had anything but giants, enchanters, fairy dragons, and such like easily conquered adversaries to contend with, and had to make his way merely through the gates of iron and brass and walls of adamant to the castle keep, where the lady of his heart was confined, all which he achieved easily as a man who could carve his way to the center of a Christmas pie, and then the lady gave him her hand as a matter of course. Ichabod, on the contrary, had to win his way to the heart of a country coquette, beset with the labyrinth of whims and caprices which were forever presenting new difficulties and impediments. And he had to encounter a host of fearful adversaries of real flesh and blood, the numerous rustic admirers who beset every portal to her heart, keeping a watchful and angry eye upon each other, but ready to fly out in the common cause against any new competitor. Among these, the most formidable was a burly, roaring, roistering blade of the name of Abraham, or, according to the Dutch abbreviation, Bram van Brunt, the hero of the country around, which rang his feats of strength and hardihood. He was broad-shouldered and double-jointed, with short curly black hair, and a bluff but not unpleasant countenance, having a mingled air of fun and arrogance. From his Herculean frame and great powers of limb, he had received the nickname of Broadbones, which was universally known. He was famed for great knowledge and skill in horsemanship, being as dexterous on horseback as a Tartar. He was foremost at all races and cockfights, and, with the ascendancy of bodily strength always acquires in rustic life, was the umpire in all disputes, setting his hat on one side, and giving his decisions with an air and tone that admitted of no gainsay or appeal. He was always ready for either a fight or a frolic, but had more mischief than ill will in his composition, and with all his overbearing roughness, there was a strong dash of waggish good humor at bottom. He had 3 or 4 boon companions who regarded him as their model, and at the head of whom he scoured the country, attending every scene of feud or merriment for miles around. In cold weather he was distinguished by a fur cap surmounted with a flaunting fox's tail. When the folks at country gathering descried an all-welling crest at a distance, whisking about a squad of hard riders, they always stood for a squall. Sometimes this crew would be heard dashing along the farmhouses at midnight, with whoop and hollow, like a troop of dawn Cossacks, and the old dames, startled out of their sleep, would listen for a moment in the hurry-scurry and clattered by, and then exclaim, "Aye, there goes Brombones and his gang." The neighbors looked upon him with a mixture of awe, admiration, and goodwill, and when any madcap prank or rustic brawl occurred in the vicinity, always shook their heads and warranted Brombones was at the bottom of it. Time for another drink of water. Okay. This Rantipole hero had for some time singled out the blooming Katrina for the object of his uncouth gallantries. And though his amorous toyings were something like the gentle caresses and endearments of a bear, yet it was whispered that she did not altogether discourage his hopes. Certain it is, as his advances were signals for rival candidates to retire, he felt no inclination to cross the line in his armors, insomuch that when his horse was seen tied to Van Tassel's paling on a Sunday night, a sure sign that his master was courting, or as it is termed, sparking within, all other suitors passed on by in despair and carried the war into other quarters. Such was the formidable rival with whom Ichabod Crane had to contend, and, considering all things, a stouter man than he would have shrunk from the competition, and a wiser man would have despaired. He had, however, a happy mixture of pliability and perseverance in his nature. He was in form and spirit like a supple jack, yielding but tough. Though he bent, he never broke, and though he bowed beneath the slightest pressure, yet, the moment it was away, jerk! He was as erect and carried his head as high as ever. To have taken the field openly against his rival would have been madness, for he was not a man to be thwarted in his amours, any more than that stormy lover Achilles. Ichabod, therefore, made his advances in a quiet and gently insinuating manner. Under the cover of his character of singing master, he made frequent visits at the farmhouse. Not that he had anything to apprehend from the meddlesome interference of parents, which is so often a stumbling block in the path of lovers. Balt Van Tassel was an easy, indulgent soul. He loved his daughter better than even his pipe, and like a reasonable man and an excellent father, let her have her way in everything. His notable little wife, too, had enough to do to attend her housekeeping and manage her poultry, for, as he sagely observed, ducks and geese are foolish things and must be looked after, but girls can take care of themselves. Thus, while the busy dame bustled about the house or plied her spinning wheel at once at the ends of piazza, honest Balt would sit smoking in his evening pipe at the other, watching the achievements of a little wooden warrior who, armed with a sword in each hand, was most valiantly fighting the wind on the pinnacle of a barn. In the meantime, Ichabod would carry on his suit with the daughter by the side of the spring under the great elm, or sauntering along in the twilight, that hour so favorable to the lover's eloquence. I profess not to know how women's hearts are wooed and won. To me, they have always been matters of riddle and admiration. Some seem to have but one vulnerable point, or door of access, while others have 1,000 avenues and may be captured in 1,000 different ways. It is a great triumph of skill to gain the former, but still a greater proof of generalship to maintain possession of the latter. For man must battle his fortresses at every door and window. He who wins 1,000 common hearts is therefore entitled to some renown, but he who keeps the undisputed sway over the heart of a coquette is indeed a hero. Certain it is that this was not the case with the redoubtable Brom Bones, and from the moment Ichabod Crane made his advances, the interest of the former evidently declined. His horse was no longer seen tied to the palings on the Sunday nights, and a deadly feud gradually arose between him and the preceptor of Sleepy Hollow. Brom, who had a degree of rough chivalry in his nature, would fain have carried matters to open warfare and settled their pretensions to the lady, according to the mode of those concise and simple reasoners, the knight-errants of yore. Excuse me. By single combat, but Ichabod was too conscious of the superior might of his adversary to enter the lists against him. He had overheard a boast of Bones that he would double the schoolmaster up and lay him on a shelf of his own schoolhouse, and he was too wary to give him an opportunity. But there was something extremely provoking in this obstinately pacific system, Jesus Christ. It left Brom no alternative but to draw upon the funds of rustic waggery in his disposition, and to play off boorish practical jokes upon his rival. Ichabod became the object of whimsical persecution to Bones and his gang of rough riders. They harried his hitherto peaceful domains, smoked out his singing school by stopping up the chimney, broke into the schoolhouse at night in spite of its formidable fastenings of withe and window stakes, and turned everything topsy-turvy so that the poor schoolmaster began to think all the witches in the country held their meetings there. But what was still more annoying, Brom took all the opportunities of turning him into ridicule in presence of his mistress, and had a scoundrel dog with whom he talked to wine in the most ludicrous manner, and introduced as a rival of Ichabod's to instruct her in psalmody. In this way, matters went on for some time, without producing any material effect on the relative situations of the contending powers. On a fine autumnal afternoon, Ichabod, in a pensive mood, sat enthroned on the lofty stool from whence he usually watched all the concerns of his literary realm. In his hand he swayed a ferule, that scepter of despotic power. The birch of justice reposed on 3 nails behind the throne, a constant terror to evildoers, while on the desk before him might be seen sundry contraband articles and prohibited weapons detected upon the person of idle urchins, such as half-munched apples, pop guns, whirligigs, fly cages, and whole legions of rampant little paper gamecocks. Apparently there had been some appalling act of justice recently inflicted, for his scholars were all busily intent upon their books, or slyly whispering behind them with one eye kept upon the master, and a kind of buzzing stillness reigned throughout the schoolroom. It was suddenly interrupted by the appearance of a negro in tow-cloth jacket and trousers, a round-crowned fragment of a hat, like the cap of Mercury, and mounted on the back of a ragged, wild, half-broken colt, which he managed with a rope by way of halter. He came clattering up to the school door with an invitation to Ichabod to attend a merrymaking or quilting frolic, to be held that evening at Mynheer Van Tassel's, and having delivered his message with the air of importance, an effort at fine language, which a negro is apt to display on petty embassies of the kind, he dashed over the brook and was seen scampering away up the hollow, full of the importance and hurry of his mission. All was now bustle and hubbub in the light, quiet schoolroom. The scholars were hurried through their lessons without stopping at trifles. Those who were nimble skipped over half with impunity, and those who were tardy had a smart application now and then in the rear, to quicken their speed or to help them over a tall word. Books were flung aside and without being put away on the shelves. Inkstands were overturned, benches thrown down, and the whole school was turned loose in an hour before the usual time, bursting forth like a legion of young imps, yelping and racketing about the green in joy at their early emancipation. The gallant Ichabod now spent at least an extra half an hour at his toilet, brushing and furbishing up his best, and indeed only suit of rusty black, and arranging his locks by a bit of broken looking-glass that hung up in the schoolhouse, that he might make his appearance before his mistress in the true style of a cavalier. He borrowed a horse from the farmer, which was his domiciliated, a choleric old Dutchman of the name of Hans van Ripper, and thus gallantly mounted, issued forth like a knight-errant in quest of adventures. But is meet I should, in the true spirit of romantic glory, give some account of the looks and equipments of my hero and his steed. The animal he bestrode was a broken-down plough horse that had outlived everything but its viciousness. He was gaunt and shagged with a ewe neck and a head like a hammer. His rusty mane and tail were tagged and knotted with burrs. One eye had lost its pupil and was glaring and spectral, but the other had the gleam of a genuine devil in it. Still, he must have fire and metal in his day, if we may judge from the name he bore of Gunpowder. He had, in fact, been a favorite steed of his master's, the choleric Van Ripper, who was a furious rider and had infused, very probably, some of his own spirit into the animal, for, old and broken down as he looked, there was more of the lurking devil in him than any young filly in the country. Ichabod was a suitable figure for such a steed. He rode with short stirrups, which brought his knees nearly up to the pommel of the saddle. His sharp elbows stuck out like a grasshopper's. He carried his whip perpendicularly in his hand like a scepter, and as his horse jogged on, he carried his whip. The motion of his arms was not unlike the flapping pair of wings. A small wool hat rested on the top of his nose, for his scanty strip of forehead might be called, and the skirts of his black coat fluttered out almost to the horse's tail. Such was the appearance of Ichabod and his steed as they shambled out of the gate of Hans van Ripper, and it was altogether such an apparition as is seldom to be met in broad daylight. It was, as I have said, a fine autumnal day. The sky was clear and serene, and nature wore that rich and golden livery which we always associate with the idea of abundance. The forests had put on their sober brown and yellow, while some trees of the tenderer kind had been nipped by the frost into brilliant dyes of orange, purple, and scarlet. Streaming files of wild ducks began to make their appearance high in the air. the bark of the squirrel might be heard from the groves of beech and hickory nuts, and the pensive whistle of the quail at intervals from the neighboring stubble field. The small birds were taking their farewell banquets. In the fullness of their revelry, they fluttered, chirping and frolicking from bush to bush, and tree to tree, capricious from the very profusion and variety among them. There was the honest cock robin, the favorite game of stripling sportsmen, with his loud, querulous note, and the twittering blackbirds flying in sable clouds, and the golden-winged woodpecker with his crimson crest, his broad black gorget, and splendid plumage, and the cedar bird with his red-tipped wings and yellow-tipped tail and its little Monterio cap of feathers, and the blue jay, that noisy coxcomb, in his gay light blue coat and white underclothes, screaming and chattering, nodding and bobbing and bowing and pretending to be on good terms with every songster of the grove. As Ichabod slowly on his way, his eye, ever open to every symptom of culinary abundance, ranged with delight over the treasures of jolly autumn. On all sides he beheld vast stores of apples, some hanging in oppressive opulence on the trees, some gathered into baskets and barrels for the market, others heaped up in rich piles for the cider press. Further on, he beheld great fields of Indian corn, with its golden ears peeping from their leafy coverts, holding out the promise of cakes and hasty pudding, and the yellow pumpkins lying beneath them, turning up their fair, round bellies to the sun, and giving ample prospects of the most luxurious of pies. And anon he passed the fragrant buckwheat fields, breathing the odor of the beehive. And as he beheld them, soft anticipation stole over his mind of dainty slapjacks, well buttered and garnished with honey or treacle by the delicate little dimpled hand of Katrina Van Tassel. Thus feeding his mind with many sweet thoughts and sugared suppositions, he journeyed along the side of a range of hills which look out upon some of the goodliest scenes of the mighty Hudson. The sun gradually wheeled his broad disk down in the west. The wide bosom of the Tappan Zee lay motionless and glassy, excepting that here and there a gentle undulation waved and prolonged the blue shadow of the distant mountain. A few amber clouds floated in the sky without a breath of air to move them. The horizon was of a fine golden tint, changing gradually into a pure apple green, and from that into the deep blue of the mid-heaven. A slanting ray lingered on the woody crest of the precipices of that blue of the mid-heaven. A slanting ray lingered on the woody crest of the precipices that overhung some parts of the river, giving greater depth to the dark gray and purple of the rocky sides. A sloop was loitering in the distance, dropping slowly down with the tide, her sail hanging uselessly against the mast. As the reflection of the sky gleamed along the still water, it seemed as though the vessel was suspended in the air. It was toward evening that Ichabod arrived at the castle of the Heer Van Tassel, which he found thronged in the pride and flower of the adjacent country. Old farmers, a spare, leather-faced race, in homespun coats and breeches, blue stockings, huge shoes, and magnificent pewter buckles. Their brisk, withered little dames in close-crimped caps, long-waisted short gowns, homespun petticoats with scissors and pincushions, and gay calico pockets hanging on the outside. Buxom lasses, almost as antiquated as their mothers, except they wear a straw hat, a fine ribbon, or perhaps a white frock, gave symptoms of city innovation. The sons in short, square-skirted coats with rows of stupendous brass buttons, and their hair generally queued in the fashion of the times, especially if they could procure an eel skin for the purpose, it being esteemed throughout the country as a potent nourisher and strengthener of the hair. Brom Bones, however, was the hero of the scene, having come to the gathering on his favorite steed Daredevil, a creature like himself, full of mettle and mischief of no one but himself could manage. He was, in fact, noted for preferring vicious animals, given to all kinds of tricks in which he kept the rider in constant risk of his neck, for he held a tractable, well-broken horse as unworthy of a lad of spirit. Fain would I pause to dwell upon the world of charms that burst upon the enraptured gaze of my hero as he entered the state parlor of Van Tassel's mansion. Not those of the bevy of buxom lasses with their luxurious display of red and white, but the ample charms of a genuine Dutch country tea-table and the sumptuous time of autumn. Such heaped-up platters of cakes of various and almost indescribable kinds, known only to experienced Dutch housewives. There was the doty donut, the tender oily coic, and the crisp and crumbly cruller, sweet cakes and shortcakes, ginger cakes and honey cakes, and the whole family of cakes. And then there were apple pies and peach pies and pumpkin pies, besides slices of ham and smoked beef, and moreover delectable dishes of preserved plums and peaches and pears and quinces, and not to mention broiled shad and roasted chickens, together with bowls of milk and cream, all mingled higgledy-piggledy, much as I have enumerated them, with the motherly teapot sending up its clouds of vapor from the midst. Heaven bless the mark! I want breath and time to discuss this banquet as it deserves, and I am too eager to get on with my story. Happily, Ichabod Crane was in not so great a hurry as his historian, but did ample justice to every dainty. He was a kind and thankful creature, whose heart dilated in proportion as his skin was filled with good cheer, and whose spirits rose with eating as some men's do with drink. He could not help, too, rolling his large eyes round as he ate, and chuckling with the possibility that he might one day be lord of all the scene of unimaginable luxury and splendor. Then he thought how soon he'd turn his back upon the old schoolhouse, snap his finger in the hands of Van Ripper, an ever-niggly patron, and kick any itinerant pedagogue out of doors that should dare call him comrade. Old Baltus Van Tassel moved among his guests with a face dilated with content and good humor. Round and jolly as the harvest moon, his hospitable attentions were brief but expressive, being confined to a shake of the hand, a slap of the shoulder, a loud laugh, and a pressing invitation to fall to and help themselves. And now the sound of the music from the common room or hall summoned to the dance. The musician was an old gray-headed Negro who had the itinerant orchestra of the neighborhood for more than half a century. His instrument was as old and battered as himself. The greater part of the time he scraped on 2 or 3 strings, accompanying every movement of the bow with a motion of his head, bowing almost to the ground and stamping with his foot whenever a fresh couple were to start. Ichabod prided himself upon his dancing as much as his vocal powers. Not a limb, not a fiber about him was idle, and yet to have seen his loosely hung frame in full motion and clattering about the room, you would have thought Saint Vitus himself, that blessed the patron of the dance, was figuring before you in person. He was the admiration of all the Negroes, who, having gathered of all ages and sizes from the farm in the neighborhood, stood performing a pyramid of shining black faces at every door and window, gazing with delight at the scene, rolling their white eyeballs and showing grinning rows of ivory from ear to ear. How could the flogger of urchins be otherwise than animated and joyous? The lady of his heart was his partner in this dance, and smiling graciously in reply to all his amorous ooglings, while Brom Bones, sorely smitten with love and jealousy, sat brooding by himself in one corner. When the dance was at an end, Ichabod was attracted to a knot of the sager folks, who, with old Van Tassel, sat smoking at one of the end piazza, gossiping over former times and drawing out long stories about the war. This neighborhood, at the time of which I am speaking, was one of those highly favored places which around the Chronicle and great men. The British and American line had run near it during the war. It had, therefore, been the scene of marauding and infested with refugees, cowboys, and all kinds of border chivalry. Just sufficient time had elapsed to enable each storyteller to dress up his tale with a little becoming fiction, and, in the indistinctness of his recollection, to make himself the hero of every exploit. There was the story of Dauphin Martling, a large blue-bearded Dutchman, who had nearly taken a British frigate with an old iron 9-pounder from a mud breastwork, only that his gun burst at the 6th discharge. And there was an old gentleman who shall be nameless, being too rich a mynheer to be lightly mentioned, who, in the Battle of White Plains, being an excellent master of defense, parried a musket ball with a small sword, insomuch that he absolutely felt it whiz round the blade, and glance off at the hilt, in proof of which he was ready at any time to show the sword, with the hilt a little bent. There were several more that had been equally great in the field, not one of whom was persuaded that he had been a considerable hand in bringing the war to a happy termination. But all these were nothing to the tales of ghosts and apparitions that succeeded. The neighborhood is rich in legendary treasures of the kind, local tales and superstitions, sifting throng that formed the population of most of our country places. Besides, there is no encouragement for ghosts in most of our villages, for they have scarcely had time to finish their first nap and turned themselves into their graves before surviving friends had traveled away from the neighborhood, so that when we turn out at night to walk their rounds, they have no acquaintance left to call upon. This perhaps is the reason why we so seldom hear of ghosts except in our long-established Dutch communities. The immediate cause, however, the prevalence of supernatural stories in these parts, was doubtless owing to the vicinity of Sleepy Hollow. There was a contagion in the very air that blew from the haunted region. It breathed forth an atmosphere of dreams and fancies infecting all the land. Several of the Sleepy Hollow people were present at Van Tassel's, and as usual, were doling out their wild and wonderful legends. Many dismal tales were told about funeral trails and mourning cries and wailings heard and seen about the great tree where the unfortunate Major Andre was taken, and which stood in the neighborhood. Some mention was also made of the woman in white that haunted the dark glen at Raven Rock, and was often heard to shriek on winter nights apt before a storm, having perished there in the snow. The chief part of the stories, however, turned upon the favorite specter of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman, who had been heard several times of late patrolling the country, and it was said tethered his horse nightly among the graves in the churchyard. The sequestered situation of the church seemed always to have made it a favorite haunt of troubled spirits. It stands on a knoll surrounded by locust trees and lofty elms, from among which its decent whitewashed walls shine modestly forth, like Christian purity of water, bordered by high trees, which peeps might be caught at the blue hills of the Hudson. To look upon its grass-grown yard, where the sunbeams seemed to sleep so quietly, one would think that there was at least the dead might rest in peace. On one side of the church extends a wide, woody dell, along which raves a large brook among broken rocks and trunks of fallen trees. Over a deep black part of the stream, not far from the church, was formerly thrown a wooden bridge. The road that led to it and the bridge itself were thickly shaded by overhanging trees, which cast the gloom about it, even in the daytime, but occasioned a fearful darkness at night. Such was one of the favorite haunts of the Headless Horseman, and the place where he was most frequently encountered. The tale was told of old Rawr, a most heretical disbeliever in ghosts, how he met the horseman returning from his foray into Sleepy Hollow, and was obliged to get up behind him. How they galloped over bush and brake, over hill and swamp, until they reached the bridge, when the horseman suddenly turned into a skeleton, threw old Rawr into the brook, and sprang away over the tree tops with a clap of thunder. The story was immediately matched by a thrice marvelous adventure of Brom Bones, who made light of the galloping Hessian and such an errant jockey. He affirmed that on returning one night from the neighboring village of Sing Sing, he had been overtaken by this midnight trooper, that he had offered to race with him for a bowl of punch, and should have won too, for Daredevil beat the goblin horse all hollow. But just as they came to the church bridge, the Hessian bolted and vanished in a flash of fire. All these tales told in that drowsy undertone with which men talk in the dark, the countenances of the listeners only now and then receiving a casual gleam from the glare of a pipe, sank deep in the mind of Ichabod. He repaid them in kind with large extracts from his invaluable author, Cotton Mather, and added many marvelous events which had taken place in his native state of Connecticut, and fearful sights which he had seen in his nightly walks about Sleepy Hollow. The revel now gradually broke up. The old farmers gathered together their families in their wagons, and were heard from some time rattling along the hollow roads and over the distant hills. Some of the damsels mounted on pillions behind their favorite swains, and their light-hearted laughter, mingling on the clatter of hooves, echoed along the silence of noise and frolic And their light-hearted laughter, mingling with the clatter of hooves, echoed along the silent woodlands, sounding fainter and fainter until they gradually died away. And the late scene of noise and frolic was silent and deserted. Ichabod only lingered behind, according to the custom of country lovers, to have a tete-a-tete with the heiress, fully convinced that he was now on the high road to success. What passed at this interview I will not pretend to say, for in fact I do not know. Something, however, I fear me, must have gone wrong, for he certainly sallied forth after no great interval, with an air of quite desolate and chapfallen. Oh, these women, these women! Could that girl have been playing off any of her coquettish tricks? Was her encouragement of the poor pedagogue all a mere sham to secure her conquest of his rival? Heaven only knows, not I. Let it suffice to say, Ichabod stole forth with the air of one who had been sacking a hen roost rather than a fair lady's heart. without looking to the right or left to notice the scene of rural wealth, on which he had so often gloated. He went straight to the stable, with several hearty cuffs and kicks roused his steed most uncourteously from the comfortable quarters in which he was soundly sleeping, dreaming of mountains of corn and oats, and whole valleys of timothy and clover. It was the very witching time of night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travels homeward, along the sides of the lofty hills which rose above Tarrytown, which he had traversed so cheerily at the afternoon. The hour was as dismal as himself. Far below the Tappan Zee spread its dusky and indistinct waste of waters, with here and there the tall mast of a sloop riding quietly at anchor under the land. In the shore of the Hudson, but it was so... with here and there the tall mast of a sloop riding quietly at anchor under the land. In the dead hush of midnight, he could even hear the barking of the watchdog from the opposite shore of the Hudson. But it was so vague and faint as only to give an idea of distance from this faithful companion of man. Now and then, too, the long-drawn crowing of a cock, accidentally awakened, would sound far, far off, from some farmhouse away among the hills. But it was like a dreaming sound in his ear. No signs of life occurred near him, but occasionally the melancholy chirp of a cricket, or perhaps the guttural twang of a bullfrog from a neighboring marsh, as if sleeping uncomfortably and turning suddenly from his bed. All the stories of ghosts and goblins that he had heard in the afternoon now came crowding upon his recollection. The night grew darker and darker, the stars seemed to sink deeper in the sky, and driving clouds occasionally hid them from his sight. He had never felt so lonely and dismal. He was, moreover, approaching the very place where many of the scenes of the ghost stories had been laid. In the center of the road stood an enormous tulip tree, which towered like a giant above all the other trees of the neighborhood, and formed a kind of landmark. Its limbs were gnarled and fantastic, large enough to form trunks for ordinary trees, twisting down almost to the earth and rising again into the air. It was connected with the tragical story of the unfortunate Andre, who had been taken prisoner hard by, and was universally known by the name of Major Andre's tree. The common people regarded it with a mixture of respect and superstition, partly out of sympathy for the fate of its ill-starred namesake, and partly from the tales of strange sights and doleful lamentations told concerning it. As Ichabod approached this fearful tree, he began to whistle. He thought his whistle was answered. It was but a blast sweeping by sharply through the dry branches. As he approached a little nearer, he thought he saw something white, hanging in the midst of a tree. He paused and ceased whistling, but on looking more narrowly, perceived that it was the place where the tree had been scathed by lightning, and the white wood laid bare. Suddenly he heard a groan. His teeth chattered and his knees smote against the saddle. It was but the rubbing of one huge bow upon another, as they were swayed about by the breeze. He passed the tree in safety, but new perils lay before him. About 200 yards from the tree, a small brook crossed the road, and ran into a marshy and thickly wooded glen, known by the name of Wiley Swamp. A few rough logs laid side by side served for a bridge over the stream. On that side of the road where the brook entered the wood, a group of oaks and chestnuts matted thick with wild grapevines threw a cavernous gloom over it. To pass this bridge was the severest trial. It was at this identical spot that the unfortunate Andre was captured, and under the covert of those chestnuts and vines were the sturdy yeomen concealed who surprised him. This has ever been considered a haunted stream, and fearful of the feelings of the schoolboy who had to pass it alone after dark. As he approached the stream, his heart began to thump. He summoned up, however, all his resolution, gave his horse half a score kicks in the ribs, and attempted to dash briskly across the bridge. But instead of starting forward, the perverse old animal made a lateral movement and ran broadside against the fence. Ichabod, whose fears increased with the delay, jerked the reins on the other side and kicked lustily on the contrary foot. It was all in vain. His steed started, it is true, but it was only to plunge to the opposite side of the road into a thicket of brambles and alder bushes. The schoolmaster now bestowed both whip and heel upon the starveling ribs of old Gunpowder, who dashed forward, snuffling and snorting, but came to a stand just by the bridge, with a suddenness that nearly sent his rider sprawling over his head. Just at this moment, a plashy tramp by the side of the bridge caught the sensitive ear of Ichabod. In the dark shadow of the grove, on the margin of the brook, he beheld something huge, misshapen and towering. It stirred not, but seemed gathered up in the gloom like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon the traveler. The hair of the affrighted pedagogue rose upon his head with terror. What was to be done? To turn and fly was now too late, and besides, what chance of their escaping ghost or goblin, if such it was, which could ride upon the wings of the wind? Summoning up therefore a show of courage, he demanded in stammering accents, "Who are you?" He received no reply. He repeated his demand in still more agitated voice. Still there was no answer. Once more he cudgeled his sides of the inflexible gunpowder, and, shutting his eyes, broke forth with involuntary fervor into a psalm tune. Just then the shadowy object of alarm put itself into motion, and with a scramble and a bound stood at once in the middle of the road. Though the night was dark and dismal, yet the form of an unknown might be in some degree ascertained. He appeared to be a horseman of large dimensions, and mounted on a black horse of powerful frame. He made no offer of molestation or sociability, but kept aloof on one side of the road, jogging along the blind side of an old gunpowder, who had not got over his fright and waywardness. Ichabod, who had no relish for the strange midnight companion, and bethought himself of the adventure of Brom Bones with the Gallian Hespian, now quickened his steed in hopes of leaving him behind. The stranger, however, quickened his horse to an equal pace. Ichabod pulled up, fell into a walk, thinking to lag behind. The other did the same. His heart began to sink within him. He endeavored to resume his psalm tune, but his parched tongue clove to the roof of his mouth, and he could not utter a stave. There was something in the moody and dogged silence of this pertinacious companion that was mysterious and appalling. It was soon fearfully accounted for. On mounting a rising ground, which brought the figure of his fellow traveler in relief against the sky, gigantic in height and muffled in cloak, Ichabod was horror-struck on perceiving that he was headless. But his horror was still more increased by observing that on the head, which should have rested on his shoulders, was carried before him on the pommel of his saddle. His terror rose to desperation. He rained a shower of kicks and blows upon gunpowder, hoping by a sudden movement to give his companion the slip. But the spectre started full jump with him. Away then they dashed through the thick and the thin, the stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. Ichabod's flimsy garments fluttering in the air as he stretched his long, lank body away over his horse's head in eagerness of the flight. They had now reached the road which turns off in the Sleepy Hollow, but Gunpowder, who seemed possessed with a demon, instead of keeping up it, made an opposite turn and plunged headlong downhill to the left. The road leads through a sandy hollow shaded by trees for about a quarter of a mile, where it crosses the bridge famous in Goblin story, and just beyond swells the green knoll on which stands the whitewashed church. As yet the panic of the steed had given his unskillful rider an apparent advantage in the chase, but just as he got halfway through the hollow, the girths of the saddle gave way, and he felt it slipping from under him. He seized it by the pommel and endeavored to hold it firm, but in vain, and had just time to save himself by clasping old Gunpowder around the neck, when the saddle fell to the earth and he heard it trampled underfoot by his pursuer. For a moment the terror of Hans Van Ripper's wrath passed across his mind, for it was his Sunday saddle, but there was no time for petty fears. The goblin was hard on his haunches, and, unskillful rider that he was, he had so much ado to maintain his seat, sometimes slipping on one side, sometimes on another, and sometimes jolted on the high ridge of his horse's backbone, with a violence he verily feared would cleave him asunder. An opening in the trees now cheered him with the hopes that the church bridge was at hand. The wavering reflection of a silver star in the bosom of that brook told him that he was not mistaken. He saw the walls of the church dimly glaring under the trees beyond. He recollected the place where Brom Bones' ghostly competitor had disappeared. If I can but reach that bridge, thought Ichabod, I am safe. Just then he heard the black steed panting and blowing close behind him. He even fancied that he felt his hot breath. Another convulsive kick in the ribs, and old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge. He thundered over the resounding planks. He gained the opposite side, and now cast a look behind to see if his pursuer should vanish according to rule, and a flash of fire and brimstone. Just then he saw the goblin rising in his stirrups, and in the very act of hurling his head at him. Ichabod endeavored to dodge the horrible missile, but too late, and encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash. He was tumbled headlong into the dust, and gunpowder, the black steed, and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind. The next morning, the old horse was found without a saddle, with the bridle under his feet, severely cropping the grass at his master's gate. Ichabod did not make his appearance at breakfast. Dinner hour came, but no Ichabod. The boys assembled at the schoolhouse and strolled idly about the banks of the brook, but no schoolmaster. Hans Van Ripper now began to feel some uneasiness about the fate of poor Ichabod and his saddle. An inquiry was set on foot, and after diligent investigation, they came upon his traces. In one part of the road leading to the church was found the saddle trampled in the dirt. The tracks of horses have deeply dented in the road, and evidently at furious speed, which were traced to the bridge. Beyond which, at the bank of a broad part of the brook, where the water ran deep and black, was found the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod, and close beside it, shattered pumpkin. The brook was searched, but the body of the schoolmaster was not to be discovered. Hans von Ripper, an executor of his estate, examined the bundle which contained all his worldly effects. They consisted of 2 shirts and a half, 2 stocks for the neck, a pair of 2 worsted stockings, an old pair of corduroy small clothes, a rusty razor, a book of psalm tunes full of dog's ears, and a broken pitch pipe. As to the books and furniture of the schoolhouse, they belonged to the community, excepting Cotton Mather's History of Witchcraft, the New England Almanac, and a book of dreams and fortune-telling, in which was last was a sheet of foolscap, and much scribbled and blotted in several fruitless attempts to make a copy of verses in honor of the heiress of Van Tassel. These magic books and the poetic scroll were forthwith consigned to the flames by Hans Van Ripper, who, from that time forward, determined to send his children no more to school, observing that he never knew any good come out of the same reading and writing. Whatever money the schoolmaster possessed, and he had received his quarter's pay but a day or 2 before, he must have had about his person at his time of his disappearance. The mysterious event caused much speculation at the church the following Sunday. Knots of gazers and gossips were collected in the churchyard, at the bridge, and at the spot where the hat and pumpkin had been found. The stories of Rawr, of Bones, and a whole budget of others were called to mind. Went a little bit too far without taking a drink, I guess. The stories of Rawr, of Bones, and a whole budget of others were called to mind, and when they had diligently considered them all and compared them to the symptom of the present case, they shook their heads and came to the conclusion that Ichabod had been carried off by the galloping Hessian. As he was a bachelor and nobody's debt, nobody troubled his head any more about him. The school was removed to a different quarter of the hollow, and another pedagogue reigned in his stead. It is true, an old farmer, who had been down to New York on a visit several years after, and from whom this account of the ghostly adventure was received, brought home the intelligence that Ichabod Crane was still alive, that he had left the neighborhood partly through fear of the goblin and Van Hans Ripper, and partly in mortification as having been suddenly dismissed by the heiress, that he had changed his quarters to a distant part of the country, had kept school and studied law at the same time, had been admitted to the bar, turned politician, electioneered, written for the newspapers, and finally had been made a justice of the 10-pound court. Brom Bones, too, was shortly after his rival's disappearance conducted the blooming Katrina in triumph to the altar, was observed to look exceedingly knowing whenever the story of Ichabod was related, and always burst into a hearty laugh at the mention of the pumpkin, which led some to suspect that he knew more about the matter than he chose to tell. The old country wives, however, who were the best judges of these matters, maintained to this day that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means, and it is favorite story that often told about the neighborhood round the winter evening fire. The bridge became more than ever an object of superstitious awe, and that may be the reason why the road had been altered of years late, so as to approach the church by the border of the mill pond. The schoolhouse being deserted soon fell to decay, and was reported to be haunted by the ghost of the unfortunate pedagogue and the plowboy, loitering homeward of a still summer evening, has often fancied his voice at a distance, channeling a melancholy psalm tune among the tranquil solitudes of Sleepy Hollow. The end of Sleepy Hollow. Alright. I'm gonna look at another story here. Oh, you know what? Dagon's only 5 pages long, so we should read Dagon. From, my H.P. Lovecraft Great Tales of Horror. And then I don't know what else to read. So apparently, Dagon is one of Lovecraft's most forward-looking stories. Because of the fact that the landmass suddenly emerging from the depths of the ocean, a monster, foreshadow the Call of Cthulhu in later stories. So this is, like, I guess, Dagon is an earlier story, I guess. Call of Cthulhu. Need to do a Sleepy Hollow version. We do have a lot of hollers. It would be pretty funny. Just talk about some like ghosts that roams the trailer park. Whose grave is at the Dollar General, the Holler Dollar. Yeah, that would be pretty fun. Maybe that should be the scary story you write, Mr. Brogath. Mr. Brogath's like, oh, you should read one of my stories. And he's like, oh, wait, I don't have a spooky story. So there we go. We can do Sleepy Holler. It needs to have the Holler Dollar in it and everything else. Because we got the Family Dollar, we got the Dollar General, we got the Dollar Tree, we got the Holler Dollar. That's just what I'm going to call them collectively, is the Holler Dollar. Alright, Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft. I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable. I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think my slavery to morphine that I am weakling or degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. It was in one of the most open and least frequently parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sank to their later degradation, so that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners. So liberal indeed was the discipline of our captors that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I can only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight. The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, wanting either for either some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land. But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous. When at last I awaked, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder and hold on. Stripe-tailed sumbitch of Sleepy Hollow, it's funny. That my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected transformation of scenery. I was in reality more horrified than astonished, for there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime, yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the land oppressed me with nauseating fear. I swear, sometimes I don't see the word unless I, break down the word into the syllables. The homogeneity. I don't know. The sun was blazing from a sky which seemed to be almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet. As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions from which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, strain my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things. For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the days progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue. On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was much too concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert. That night I encamped, and on the following day still traveled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it. By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance, an intervening valley setting it out sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again, and in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I felt not quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence. I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me, but I think my horror was greater when I attained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Though my terror ran curious reminiscence of Paradise Lost and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for descent, while after a drop of a few hundred feet, declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps where no light had yet penetrated. All at once my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me, an object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon. That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express, for despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had been known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely. The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions, and was almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphs unknown to me, and unlike anything I had ever seen in books, consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things, which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean horizon plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound. Plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Dore. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shrewn, disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage to the monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or Buller, they were damnably human in general outline despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassing bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seemed to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background, for one of the creatures was shewn in the act of killing a whale represented as but little larger than himself. I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment have decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing while the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then suddenly I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Vast, Polyphemus-like, and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its giant, scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent to the sloping cliff, of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little. I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have a distinct recollection of great storms some time after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard peals of thunder and other tones which nature only utters in her wildest mood. When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing, nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew that they could not believe. Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god, but soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not impress my inquiries. It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has only given transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account of the information and the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men. Often I ask myself if I could not have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of a fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. Then I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply? I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may have at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day where they may rise above the billows to drag down in their reeking talons of the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind, of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean floor shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium. The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as if some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me. God, that hand. The window. The window. The end. He threw himself out the window. Because the shit he's seen was too much. Alright, I'm gonna get my over here. And we're gonna read one last thing. We're gonna read my all-time favorite thing to read. I have to find it. The Raven. Lenore. I like how it's in the back of the book. This is like a, this is almost a 900-page book. I might read the lore too. Let's see how my voice does after the Raven. I have to say that I read the Raven rather intensely. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over a many quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, I distinctly remember it was the bleak December, in which each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token. And the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, something louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely there is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped the stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not in the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with a mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled at this ungainly fowl to hear such discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird upon his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on that placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word did he outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by a reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it is utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope and melancholy birdie bore of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling of all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled the cushioned seat in front of of a bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining with the lamplight gloating over, but whose violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er, she suppress, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed with an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nymph, and forget his lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed here thee ashore, desolate yet undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, by that heaven bends above us, by that God we both adore. Tell this soul that sorrow laden, if within the dozen Aden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word or sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back to the tempest of the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak out from my heart, and thy form off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, is still sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul out from that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. I always like the flow of the raven. I really like the raven. It's one of my favorite things. It's one of my favorite poems. I've always liked it. It's fun. It's also fun to read, I think. Alright, I'm gonna read one more because that wasn't too bad. We'll just read another poem. Ooh, there's the Haunted Palace. Let's read that one. I have to find it, though. Annabelle Lee. I like that he wrote a poem to his mother. The Haunted Palace. In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once fair, stately palace, radiant palace reared its head. In the monarch thought's dominion it stood there. Never seraph spread opinion over fabric half so fair. Banners yellow, glorious golden, on its rift did float and flow. All this was in the olden time long ago. In every gentle air that dallied in that sweet day, along the ramparts plumed and pallid, a winged odor went away. Wanderers in that happy valley, through 2 luminous windows saw spirits moving musically to lutes well tuned and law. Round about a throne there, where sitting, Porphyrogene, in his glory well befitting, the ruler of the realm was seen, and all with pearl and ruby glowing was the fair palace door, through which came flowing, and sparkling evermore, a troop of echoes whose sweet duty was to but sing, in voices of surpassing beauty, the wit and wisdom of their king. But evil things and robes of sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall dawn upon him desolate. And round about his home the glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim remembered story of the time entombed. And travelers now within that valley, through the red-lit windows see vast forms that move fantastically to a discordant melody, while like a ghastly rapid river, through the pale door, a hideous throng rushed out forever and laugh, but smile no more. Alright, this is where I'm going to end stream tonight. Thank you all for joining me. It was a great Halloween bash. Usually I end up going trick-or-treating, but this year, since Cynthia is a little bit, is almost an adult now, almost an adult-sized dragon, she decided that she has outgrown trick-or-treating, or even really passing out candy this year. So we live way up on the mountain, so nobody ever comes to our house to trick-or-treat. So we always keep a little bowl of candy just in case, because Cynthia's was that kid who would walk up a mile uphill to get a piece of candy. But I will be back Sunday with some Final Fantasy 14 for some Halloween time. We're gonna do the All Saints Wake quest, and then next week I'll have a schedule out again, and we'll finish Little Goody Two Shoes. But I will see you guys Sunday at 4 p.m. Everybody have a good night. Happy Halloween!